channel, The Healing Heart. I'm Calgan, you're you, and let's go through this together. And in the video today, I'm going to be talking about the stages of grief that a lot of people are familiar with, but also what are known as the tasks of mourning. And these tasks are things that a person can sort of work through to give you a sense of, that there's something that you can do to help you get through this. As always, I've got the coconut water here. Keep me hydrated, very important. All right, so firstly, let's have a look at the stages of grief. And these stages of grief were very put forward by one of the physiotherapists, Kubler-Ross, and they were, more sort of targeted around people that have died or lost through death, but they also have been applied to any sort of loss, really, which involves breakup or divorce, that sort of thing. And these stages are not linear, but they do seem to come in a certain order. And the first stage of grief that you're probably going to go through is denial. And this is where it first happens and you sort of can't believe it's happened. And it's denial and shock, really. Even if the relationship's had problems for quite some time, there is still that shock when it finally happens. And this, this denial phase is where you'll sort of tell yourself, well, this can't be happening. Things were so great just a few weeks ago, or even up until the day before. And so your first reaction is going to be a bit of denial that it's actually even happening. This can go on for a little while. Then what will come as it sets in a bit more is usually anger. And this is where you start to feel a bit angry about what's happened towards the other person, possibly towards yourself, anger for things that you did, anger towards things you didn't do, things you should have done, things you shouldn't have done. It's very important in the anger stage to not go and do something, silly. Stay legal. Try to find outlets for your anger. Some people experience anger a lot more than others. I'm actually myself quite, I guess, placid in a way. I find it difficult to tap into anger. But so long as you don't go and do anything to the other person or to damage any property or anything like that, anger can actually be quite a good tool to help you get through this. Because when the anger comes, it's more of a motivating feeling than the sadness and stuff like that. And so it's okay to feel anger so long as you just don't act on it. Now, the next stage is bargaining. And bargaining and anger can sort of, one can come before the other. It's usually in this way, though. And bargaining is obviously where you start to try and bargain with that person, look, please, we can work it out. I'll do whatever you want, that sort of thing. Also, a lot of people start bargaining with their spiritual belief. They bargain with the universe. If you bring it back to me, I'll do this, I'll do that. Or people that believe in God, that sort of thing, might start bargaining with God. If you bring it back, I'll do this, I'll do that. And so, but the bargaining, especially when some person has basically decided that they don't want to, be around, or at that stage, they're wanting to get away from you. So trying to bargain them back in is probably only going to make it worse. But it is a stage of grief. It's like a reactionary stage where your system, your core belief system, your biological system, is going into trying to do anything to reconnect with that person. And I've talked about why that is in another video. about attachment theory and why we are attached and why we react in the way we do when that attachment symbol is being taken away. And then after the bargaining and the anger and stuff, you'll start to fall a little bit into depression or that deep sadness as the finality starts to kick in. Once the bargaining, you see that's not working. The denial, the anger, you've sort of been through that. And this is where it's quite dangerous. You could fall into quite a deep depression. And that is why it's important to, try and look after your sleep as much as you can, your diet, try to eat well. If you have a job, do your best to turn up at work, because if you lose your job, that's only going to make things worse. And obviously stay off the alcohol, the drugs, the junk food, the spending sprees, all of that sort of thing, because the depression stage is probably the worst stage. It's the hardest one to handle. And then after the depression, the last sort of stage of grief is the acceptance. Okay, this is where we accept what's happened. We're starting to come to the fact that, look, this is happening, or it has happened, and we're coming to accept that, And once you get through to acceptance, then that actually starts to be a bit more of a calm, peaceful place to be compared with all of these other ones. Now, like I said, the stages of grief are not linear. Okay, you could find yourself going from anger into bargaining, into depression, back to denial. The anger comes up again. A week or two goes by, you think, I'll bargain, I'll try and talk them into it again, or something like that. As you work towards acceptance. And once you've been in acceptance for a while, this is where life will start to readjust, and hopefully you'll be able to then sort of move forward, from this point on. So those are some of the emotional things that you're probably going to experience as you go through the stages of grief. Now, some things that may help, okay, are these 4 tasks that you can set yourself to try to adjust to what's going on. And like I said, by having tasks to do, gives you maybe a sense that there is something to do, because in a lot of cases, and this decision's out of your hands, there's nothing you can do about it, and you feel so helpless and lost and alone, and it's just, and as it goes on, it can get really maddening, frustrating, that sort of thing. So these are 4 tasks that you can set yourself to work on and hopefully help get through this this period in your life. Okay. Now, so the first task is to accept the reality of the loss, to try and get it into your system, into your mindset that the loss has happened, or is happening. Try to accept it rather than fighting against it. If you're fighting against it, then it can, like I've said in other videos, it can actually make it a bit worse. And by accepting the reality of the loss, you're hopefully fast tracking towards acceptance, which is that stage of grief, the final stage of grief, okay? The next task that you're going to have to set yourself is to process the pain of grief, okay? Now, this is a brutal stage, because a lot of people grieve differently, and the pain levels will be different, but it's almost impossible to lose someone that you've been attached to, or in love with, built a life with, and not experience some level of pain. And you need to process that. And the way to process that is to accept the fact that you've been hurt, you've been wounded, and when the feelings come up, you just need to recognize them, lean into them. Similarly to the first task, to accept them, accept that that pain, rather than fighting against it. No, I don't like this, or I don't want to be like this. You kind of need to lean into it a bit further and just accept that the pain is there, and it will subside as you go along, but you need to process it. A lot of people try to avoid processing the pain by overworking or staying busy, obviously drinking, drugs, over socializing, all sorts of things to try to not face that pain, because that pain can be really, really hard to deal with. I know in my case it's been absolutely brutal, and waking up in the morning is just incredibly tough, and I have to force myself through it. But it's important to allow those feelings to come and for you to recognize that they're there. I spoke briefly in another video about the importance of crying, especially for men. A lot of men believe that they shouldn't cry, or especially when you're in that anger phase. Well, I don't care, stuff them, I don't need to cry. But if you're feeling that crying coming up, it's important to let it out, even if you're at work. See if you can maybe go to the bathroom for 10 minutes or out to the car or something to allow that out, because your body has evolved crying for a reason. It serves a purpose and a function. So it's like an emotional release, but also tears have small toxins in them that body's getting rid of, that sort of thing. So crying is very important in the processing the pain of grief. And the sooner you do that, the better, because if you don't and you try to suppress it and push it down, it could come up later in other sorts of ways. Physical ailments like bad back, or headaches, or that sort of thing, or an explosion of anger at some other point if something triggers it. So the second task is to process the pain of grief, okay? The third task that you're going to need to get through is to adjust to your new life without that person around. And this involves, firstly, external adjustments, like, your living situation, doing things for yourself. You're going to have to take care of your food, your clothing, getting things ready for work, that sort of thing. And again, your living arrangements. I think if you're living together and this breakup is going ahead, one of you should move out. I don't advocate trying to live together. Say something like, well, we've broken up, but we're still living together. That's not going to work. It's going to be really tough. And if you're trying that in hopes that you're going to reconcile, look, hopefully it works for you, but mentally it's going to be really, really tough. And a lot of times the relationship needs space away from each other, 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, to really experience life without each other, especially for the person that's making the decision. They go out and they experience life without you, and perhaps it's not going to be as good as they thought it was. So you're going to need that space. There's also internal adjustments that need to be made. All the little habits that you had with your ex-partner when you go shopping, maybe, or you see a show that they'd love to go to. Oh, I'll buy tickets for them. Well, no, you can't be doing that anymore, unfortunately. And also the internal adjustment as your identity, because for the last however long, your identity has been a part of a partnership. You were the partner, or you were the boyfriend, or the girlfriend, or the husband, and now you're going to have to adjust to your identity as a single person. But this is where strength can come from, and readjusting to being used to being by yourself. Don't isolate yourself, obviously, that's not good. Try to keep connection with friends, reconnect with friends you haven't seen for a while, and try to make that internal adjustment from being in a partnership to now being by yourself. Another adjustment that seems to come for a lot of people is the spiritual adjustments. I've found that people who are not very spiritual or religious will turn to a belief, like a lot of people start going to church, or a lot of people start meditating with the universe, and they turn to something like a higher power or something to help them through that, and that's fine. I mean, I've done that myself, you know, and I ask the universe, like, please help me, because I can't get through this by myself. I need your help, so please help me. And I've also seen where people who are already connected to the universe or God, that sort of thing, they start questioning their beliefs. You know, well, how could God let this happen? How could the universe let this happen? I'm going to turn away from you now, that sort of thing. So it can go both ways, but that's a spiritual adjustment that will need to happen as well, okay? And the fourth task that you can set yourself is to find an enduring connection with the person that you're no longer with. And what that means is to try to compartmentalize a place for them in your life, which is going to allow you to move on with your life. Okay, so instead of but trying to stay connected with that person in a way that, you know, well, I've got to be back with that person, and I can't live without that person, and I won't find anyone else like that person. It's important to try and find another different connection with that person, so that it enables you to then move on. That connection can look like, you know, well, we had a fantastic time, and she's still a really nice person. She never did anything wrong to me, all the way through to, you know, I hate her intensely, or he cheated on me, so I'm never going to speak to him again, or that sort of thing. But finding that connection that allows you to move forward with your life. And, you know, this can take a while, as the shock, the denial, the grief, as you go through all of that, to come to this point where you feel a different sort of connection with that person. Similar to the stages of grief, these tasks don't have to be linear, but this is sort of like a general guideline of the stage that you'll go, or the the stage that you'll go through in that order, sort of thing. So, you know, accept the reality that this has now happened. Process the pain of that. Don't distract yourself from that pain. Don't try and mask it with other stuff. Seek help. Seek connections with people that can help you through it. Adjust to your new life. If you're still in the same place, you know, take down the reminders of that person. Maybe move things around in your bedroom. Buy new bed sheets. Do things like that to try and adjust to this new life. And then over time, you know, as the grieving wears down, then you'll already be down that path. And then, yeah, find that enduring connection with that person in a way that helps you move forward. So whatever that connection is, as long as it's not stopping you from moving forward with your life. So I hope that helps. It's a really, really tough process. It's really painful. I just don't wish it on anyone, but unfortunately in today's world, it seems to be happening more and more, and I may do another video on the reasons why that is a bit further down the track. But thanks for watching. If this video helps even one person, then I'm glad I've put it up. Please hit the subscribe button down below and put a like on the video. I've put my email address there if you'd like me to have a quick look at your situation. I'll do the first one for free. But until then, please take care of yourself and your heart and your health.